Welcome to the Old Glory Renovations Podcast, the podcast about home renovations from the home renovations experts. Hosted by Rob Hefner and Mike Landry. The Old Glory Renovations Podcast wants to show you how to enjoy your home renovations.
Rob's show taught me a lot.
Choosing the right contractor for the job doesn't have to be scary, and home renovations are built to enjoy and be fun.
I got so much more for my money.
Now, here are your hosts for the Old Glory Renovation Podcast, Rob Hefner and Mike Landry.
Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of Old Glory Renovations Podcast show. Today we've got a really special guy I'm going to be talking to today. He's actually their director of operations. Now, when you hear and experience this guy's history as an actual craftsman, you're going to be really impressed. I know I was. And I wanted to get an interview with him because he's got over 50 years of performing trade services as a craftsman in all disciplines. You know, back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, I mean, carpenters or builders, they actually built everything. They ran their own plumbing, they ran their own wires, they built their own structures, they did everything. Put the tile down, built the cabinets. It was all in, okay? These days we call subcontractors and bring them in and manage them. So there's a huge, huge difference in somebody that has that level of knowledge and some of the complexity of things that he's built and repaired over the years is just really fascinating. So we're going to talk. This guy started when he was 12 years old working with his dad. And his dad was one of those precision guys. He's like, you know, an engineering mentality, very precise. And he instilled that quality in Bill. Bill, thanks for coming out today, brother.
Yeah, you're welcome. Want to see what we're going to do?
Well, you know, your background is so fascinating, and I can't wait to share this with people because, you know, I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of older, I had the opportunity to work on very complex projects, right. Historic projects, stuff like that. And my issue was I was a little concerned because if it has a historic tag on it and you got to deal with the historic preservation to preserve its status.
Yes.
Which you call it the
Hysterical Society.
The Hysterical Society. Oh, it's brutal, dude. Yes. I have shied away from those projects because of a number of issues. Being able to replicate the original components, to be able to preserve its historic accreditation, right? So we're going to be talking about all kinds of different things to really, I guess, expose your level of knowledge and history and what you contribute to the team of Old Glory. Which I will tell you, I was a builder for 22 years. I'm in awe. I am in awe. Thank you for your time today. So the past 30 years, you've been a remodeler. And you've had to do a lot of different things to satisfy your clients. But when they come to you, you put the C in custom. Not like what we're talking about today. I'm talking about hand milling parts. I mean, you're amazing, right? So let's start off talking about like historic projects, like the Victorians, the Craftsman, the super custom design homes that have trim components that they're no longer available. They were hand milled, right? So let's talk about framing because you started when you were 19, right? After working with your dad for years, from 12 years old, right? You were actually heavily involved with complex framing projects like Victorian framing.
Yeah, I mean, we were framing Victorian houses that had 38-foot ridge roofs, 35-foot cathedral ceilings front to back when you walk into the front. We had a folly, that's the round one that's got the point on one side, and a third-floor gazebo with a bell-shaped roof on the other side.
God. I mean, so what's it like being up there putting the main structure in place? I mean, that's got to be scary, dude.
At 19, you didn't think of it. I had my brother standing on the outside walls handing me a 40-foot 2x8.
Those were like 12 on 12 pitches, 12 on 14s. I mean, you got to be hanging from a rope like a monkey.
No, I was standing on a 2x6 with 40 pounds of stuff hanging on my tool belts and a nail gun with a rope in my hand. With a hose in my hand, dragging behind me, walking on this, and that's just what I did.
You're
At
crazy.
19, you don't think of it.
You're crazy.
Yes.
Crazy.
Yes.
Okay. So another project you've done here recently, I had the opportunity to work with a product called EpiWood. Okay. It like to drove us crazy because technically this is called ironwood, like iron, right?
Yes.
This you have to pre-drill this stuff.
Even if you have drill points on your screws, you cannot put them in there without pre-drilling.
Yeah, you can't screw a screw into it, and you damn sure can't hammer a nail into it.
No, not at all.
It is ironwood.
Yes.
Stuff is absolutely gorgeous, but it's like stone.
Yes. Well,
Right.
that's why it's good for 75 years buried under the ground. You can pull it up. It looks the same.
It's beautiful wood. I mean, absolutely beautiful. But one of the thing that really caught my attention because you there was an existing gazebo, right? And you were tasked to hand mill all the parts.
Yeah.
Because of the way that the structure was designed, and custom build the hand railing, the post, and the deck.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Because this was a gazebo with cedar, the distance between the posts on them were totally different. They were nowhere similar at all. So every time you hook that pinwheel up, to put the design in there, the cross members and everything else were at a different angle. So you had to assemble the whole thing together without actually cutting and putting it together so you could mark the lines and make the cuts precise. So when you did assemble, you didn't have a gap on it. It was exactly fit to that section. Each one of them was different.
And this is with EpiWood.
Yes.
What'd you do? Bring a jackhammer?
Believe it or not, as hard as the wood is, and the fact that you can't screw into it, it mills rather nicely. It's actually not as hard to cut as you would expect it to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that design is absolutely gorgeous.
And actually, the handrails on top, I fit directly to that cedar wood. I cut it to shape to the cedar, so there was a perfect fit on the cedar wood.
Well, the cedar posts are round.
Well, yeah, but they're
They're
odd
like
shaped.
they're like logs,
Right,
right?
right.
They don't have a perfect
No, there's not a perfect
symmetrical
round. It's an odd shape and everything else, but it's cut directly to that.
Bill, that was a beautiful project, man. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm jealous. I'd like to have one. Okay, so that helps people understand that for years you were framing complex structure. I mean, if you go through the Heights and you look at these Victorian homes,
Oh, yeah.
and all the personality, the roofs are all very complex. I mean, anything round in construction is a nightmare.
Yes.
Okay, especially with roofs and things that penetrate from the roofs, and with these steeples that go up forever.
Right.
And then all of the exterior trim work that give it its personality. One of the projects we're going to talk about here is a historic project where it had a tin roof on it. So we're going to get into some of those projects right now. So moving into cabinets and trim and exterior trim and siding and stuff like that. I'm fascinated that you had the opportunity to work on these houses built back in like 1923, 1908. I really wanted to do some of those, but I didn't feel that I had the complete knowledge to be able to tackle that and do it successfully. Where obviously you've got decades to bring to the table, and I don't have a mill at my house. I can whip up things when I need it, right?
Well, I came from out of town, so I'm used to areas up north that have a little bit more older houses and further east and everything else that are just they're beautiful, and you don't want to go into a house like that and take a off the shelf from Home Depot or Lowe's and put that piece of trim in there because it doesn't look right.
No, it's going to look like crap.
So you've got.
Where are you from, Bill?
Originally from Long Island.
Long Island,
Long Island, yes. I'm from New York, so,
New York.
yeah. I drink coffee.
Yeah. I wish I had that accent. It's pretty cool. Okay, so let's talk about some of these projects. The 1923 house
Yes.
that had a bunch of exterior trim elements that had failed. Now, these are, when you say pickets, most people think about a little 2-inch round picket, okay,
Right.
or a square picket. These are 4-inch by 4-inch posts that are hand turned, like you see in stairwells.
Right.
That was actually the railing for a balcony outside.
Right. and several of them are rotted out, and they are not available. You can't go to a store to buy these anymore. I do have a lathe that I've used since I was about 12 years old. I still have my salt and pepper shaker at home that I made when I was 12. And on that lathe, I turned 15 of these, and they matched exactly to what was originally there. So when the whole thing was put together and painted, you can't tell which ones I turned and which ones have been there for 80, 100 years.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to an interesting project. This one is this client did not have this high detail, high-minded, high-end space vision. They were rustic and country,
Right.
And they had a massive pile of reclaimed lumber from barns, right?
Right, yes.
All different sizes and widths and shapes and thicknesses. And your task in this project was to create the cabinets,
Right.
and that personality throughout the house.
Yes. She wanted very rustic on this, especially in the bathroom. In the bathroom, we hand-built the cabinets. We did use standard plywood on that. But then the countertop, the backsplash, and the shelves were all made out of this barn wood. So we actually did the countertop. You know how the wood, you'll see the grain and everything else when it's aged on the barn wood. And that is actually the countertop. It's not smooth, but the beauty of it, the way that it stands out, especially when you have a stacked stone accent wall right next to it, and then a stone type tile in the shower that's right next to that. All of these elements come together to make it look as old and rustic as what she was trying to get.
I bet she was very happy with the results
Yes.
because I've seen the pictures and it's absolutely gorgeous.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go to another project. This one was a 1908 two-story house.
Yes.
It was used as converted to a 2-apartment home.
Right.
And well, it was being used as 2 apartments, but you converted it back to a home with a sound studio.
Yes. The customer did commercials as a profession, and so he needed a sound studio. Well, this building that he bought was great that we could use, but it was 150 feet from an interstate.
Oh my God.
So we had to rebuild that room to sound isolate it. And so that was done in that. The rest of the place, we restored back to its original beauty.
Now remember, this is a 1908 home.
Yeah. So the baseboards were 12-inch high with a top piece on it. That was decorative top piece that had to be cut out.
This was a historic property.
Yes.
Okay, so it had a historic designation, and it needed to preserve
Yes.
this with all of the application and use changes inside the home.
We even made the hidden doors, the sliding hidden doors, functional again. They were stuffed back in the wall and covered over.
Yeah, right.
And we pulled out these oak doors that were 8 foot tall. It was 10-foot ceilings.
Oh my God!
And actually got that functional.
Now back then, all these walls
doors.
were they had the
Plaster.
plaster walls, right?
Now we did take the plaster down in this case because it was all cracked and everything else, and we put back drywall, but we finished it smooth to make it look like the original plaster.
So like a level 5 finish, where
Yes.
it's just no texture on the walls.
No
It's-
texture at all, everything nice and smooth.
Floated
Looked just
flat.
looked perfectly like flat plaster.
Yeah. Okay, now there was something else with that particular project. Was it the heaters?
Yes, we took this was the old cast iron heaters, and we pulled those out, had them sandblasted, refinished, and put them back in. So we actually still had the original historic look inside the house.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we did some good work on that. It was a
You ever
beautiful
notice
place.
that the crap we build today is not designed to last, and the
No.
stuff we built back then lasts forever?
It was a 100-year-old thing, and we were using it. So
So they still worked.
yes,
Wow, that's amazing.
yes,
Now there's a project that was recently done because I want people to understand that you are a real craftsman. I mean, you don't just call a trim guy to come out and do something. You're
I am that guy.
You are that guy, right?
Yes.
So in this particular case, this house had literally mahogany door frames. This is exterior wall
yes.
failures.
It's actually there were 3 sliding glass doors in this house. They were 5 foot wide, 6'8" tall, and to placed them, she went back to the original manufacturer. They were $20,000 a piece. So
Wow.
$60,000 just for the material. And instead of doing that,
Well, we're
her,
talking mahogany door frames that
Yes.
the sliders are in.
Right.
The doors are made out of mahogany.
mahogany. Right.
And replacing them would have cost $60,000.
Just for the material. Then
Holy
install. So it would have
crap.
been about a $70,000 job. And
I'll take it.
sure.
Two
But-
phone calls and we're good.
But, that $60,000 goes to somebody else.
Yeah, that's right.
Doesn't do anything for your pocket.
Exactly.
So what we did was I told her, I said, look, I can replace all that mahogany. So we actually bought mahogany and we on site at their house hand milled everything to match the original wood. We did the rabbet cuts. We did the indents where the wheels fit on the bottom. We did the shape for the window, the glass to fit in there, reused the glass.
Wow.
And we got new wheels, but they were the exact original wheels to match. And everything was put back together and restored. We did about 4 coats of finish on this stuff. We used marine grade poly.
Wow.
And these things are beautiful. They're going to last her forever. She said all of her people, it's a brand name type that they maintain forever. Big
Right.
house.
So what was her cost on that element?
It was about $19,000
Wow.
instead of $7,000.
Less than a third.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So she was not too unhappy about that.
Hand built.
Yes.
That's amazing. You guys are just incredible. How long did that project take, out of curiosity?
It was a little bit of time. We were on there about 5 weeks.
But you were doing like the whole deck on the outside.
Yeah, we were
so-
doing the deck. We were
Yeah.
doing everything else. We did re-sided the house. We ended up going inside and putting flooring inside the house. We did quite a bit on this place.
Do you get you know how these older homes have that short lattice that they did on the exteriors on a lot
Yes.
of these older homes? Do you guys do that kind of work?
Yes.
You
If
don't
it
see
can
that.
be done on-
Everybody wants to switch you over to Hardy because that's what they know.
Yeah.
If you wanted to preserve the look, or you have a historic project, you have to preserve the look.
Yes.
Tell me this. There's an old house that was built back in the early 1900s, where the flooring. Tell me about that flooring, with the oxides and all that.
Oh, well, those type of floors that you have in those days, you can't replace them. The wood is different. The density of the wood, the old growth timber.
How old was that house?
We did one that was in the originally built in the 40s. And what happened was they had somebody come in, do a siding job on them that they went all the way down to the ground. And this was up on pier and beam.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sealed everything underneath. So any moisture that was under there had to come up through the house because they did it in vinyl. Well, consequently, it rotted out the subfloor and it rotted out the beams under there. The actual top board, what you walk on, was oak 2 1/4 inch tongue and groove. And they did have tar paper in between the subfloor and that, thankfully.
Okay.
We were able to take that floor up, number each one, rebuild the frame underneath, rebuild the subfloor with plywood, put plastic down underneath so that it kept it sealed, and then put that oak floor back in and totally restored that oak floor in place.
Wow.
So
That's awesome. And it's the original floor.
the original floor.
And
from
back
the 40s.
then, the wood was awesome back then.
Oh, yeah.
We've destroyed all the old growth wood. Now
we don't have anything like it.
we're recycling,
Barns.
trees that were trees. Well, recycling. If you want it to reclaim older wood, you have to get it from a reclaimed barn, or you've got young growth where they're cutting down 5-year-old trees and making it. It just doesn't
It's
have
nowhere
the
near it.
appearance, the integrity, or the strength that it used to have for trees that were grown for hundreds of years.
If you go to a 1908 house, 1915 house, and you try and drive a nail into the framing, you're going to take a current 16-penny nail and make a pretzel out of it.
Oh yeah, because the wood petrifies over time.
Well, not only that, the density of it, because it was that old growth lump timber. The grain was so much closer together that it is hard.
Is that why they handmade those triangular or
Cut
point?
nails?
Yeah, cut nails. That's
Yes.
yeah.
Partially.
Wow.
Yeah.
You,
But even an
you had
older
mentioned
nail-
that an engineer came in on a project where you made structural repairs, right?
Yes.
and had now most of these homes, the homes that we were talking about, do have some structural failure, and that's the next thing I want to hit on here is structural repairs to these older homes. So there's one in Galveston or there's several in Galveston that you've worked on that were 100-year-old homes.
Oh, or
that
more.
had structural failure.
Yes.
Tell me about some of those.
After Harvey and actually after Ike, there was some financing to repair these things. And some of these people, we ended up going in, we found the main beam on the bottom of this. Now, this thing is 6 foot up in the air, and it's a 10 by 12. Mm-hmm. That beam is totally rotted out from age, from the humidity that we have around here.
Wow.
So it wasn't sealed off. So it was rotted. Mm-hmm. And you have to hold the house up.
Right.
Take that beam out, replace it to a point where it's still good, so you're not trying to take the whole house apart. Mm-hmm. So, and then you have to structurally match it up so that it's cut in a way and screwed in and put back together so that it still holds together.
Right.
And that we've done numerous times. Termite repair, moisture repair, even newer houses, we end up doing those things on.
Well, you've got a house that, there's a lot of structural failure in the newer homes built in the 70s and the 80s.
Right.
They've got the Formosan termites, and they don't maintain their home, so water gets in, starts degrading the beams and the bottom plates. Yeah, and then once that starts failing, I mean, you've got one. This is a 1970 split level house, right? Needed repairs, but what's interesting about this is in the middle of the house. Yeah. It's a main support beam. It rotted out from the first story and the second story, but they had a bunch of custom wood paneling in the living room, which is one side of the wall,
right? And
they didn't want you to destroy that.
They didn't want that paneling replaced or destroyed or moved or anything.
Right.
So I actually reframed the whole wall from behind that paneling without disturbing the paneling.
Wow, that's awesome.
And then, had to go up in, and the main beams going across holding the next floor above had to be replaced also. Now, that drywall I was able to pull off. But the paneling itself stayed in place the whole time I reframed behind it.
Well, depending on the size of the house, paneling, an entire room paneling like you see in the homes built back then, where it's all wood, stained, and there's specific patterns, it's
right.
a high detail space. It probably cost them about $25,000 to $30,000 to fix all that stuff.
Oh, certainly.
And
that financing was just not available, so you do it with what's there. And you maintain it. You don't tear it up.
I guarantee you there's not another company who said, we're going to preserve that. We have to tear it out. I'm sorry. We can redo it for you, but yeah, we're not going to even try that. Right.
I'm stubborn. I like people to tell me I can't because then I'll show you how I can.
What about the 1970s house in LaPorte where you had beam failure there?
It was the outside wall failure, and the main post underneath a beam that was 16 feet up in the air.
Wow.
Holding a whole room on the second floor and then the roof above it.
Wow.
The outside wall was a 2x6 wall and was totally termite eaten out. The 3 2x6s that were 16 feet long underneath this beam holding it up were gone. Basically, what was holding up that whole room on the second floor was the siding and the drywall. First thing I did was get some structure underneath that beam because I was waiting for it to drop in.
Right.
And then...
So what, you were using screw jacks?
We were using screw jacks on that to get up underneath that because we actually had to lift it a little bit. It had dropped some.
Wow.
And it was so bad that the triple 2x12 header above a 6 foot wide window, the only thing we found was the grain.
Wow.
The rest of the header was missing. The termites had eaten it out.
It's fascinating how it drops a little bit. You'd expect complete failure, catastrophic failure.
Most people would have just told them to tear the house down. I did another one up in Deer Park like that, where they had a brick exterior and the interior had been eaten out about 2/3 of the walls.
Wow.
By termite. And we rebuilt the whole thing, never touched a brick,
Wow.
and got it back into place. And it was inspected by engineers. They were fine with what we did.
That's awesome.
Yes.
All right. We're going to run out to a break. When we get back, we're going to be talking about some recent projects that are totally fascinating. So stay tuned.
We'll be right back with more of the Old Glory Renovations Podcast. Old Glory Renovations revolutionized the industry to put the customer in total control. There's little to no deposit to begin work, weekly invoicing only on completed work, weekly itemized labor and material cost for invoicing, eliminating wasting your money with overpriced turnkey estimates. Their trade labor are on staff and not subcontractors. They don't leave projects sitting dormant for days or weeks or waiting on a subcontractor. They have proper general liability insurance coverage. Call Old Glory Renovations now and take control while maximizing your buying power. Old Glory, trust, honesty, confidence. Taking the fear out of home improvement. 281-546-8836 or online at oldglorytx.com. The Old Glory Renovations Podcast, helping you enjoy your renovations. Now let's get back to Rob and Mike.
Hey guys, thanks for sticking with us. I'm talking with Bill Parenti. He's with Old Glory Construction, and he is the director for operations. But this guy has an incredible history as a tradesman in all disciplines. You know, when you do something for 50 years, you're daddy. That's just it. Most of the builders today are just, you know, we're phone people. We pick up a phone, we call a specialist. This guy swung a hammer and has done everything from the framing all the way down to the concrete. And that's the way it was done back then. So we're learning a lot of stuff from him. But these projects that we're talking about, I mean, this is just a microcosm. It's a little bit of insight to literally 50 years of experience and 30 years of concentrating as a professional. Okay, so I want to talk about this 1923 custom home that had the 300 linear feet of hand milled fencing that had a bunch of degradation, and I'm talking these pickets have custom milling at the top, right? I mean, this is like intricate kind of stuff, and there's like 300 linear feet of this with custom fence posts and everything else, and had a bunch of failure and degradation, and then you also had to do some structural repairs on that house. Tell me about that.
Well, out of the 30 main 8x8 posts that were on that, we had to replace 17 of them. They were rotted out. All of the cross beams, the 2x4s that were in between those posts to hold up the pickets, they were all rotted. Now, one of the things was everything was rotted behind, coming in from the backside where they hadn't been painted before they were assembled. So when we did this, everything we assembled it where it was going to touch together, we put a layer of paint. That keeps it from dry rotting from the backside.
Yeah, and this fence, every component has artistic detail.
Yes, all the posts had special tops on it that were built on top of them. Each one of the tops of the pickets were a certain cut that we matched. And we did this on the whole fence. We probably placed about 50% of the pickets on it.
This is a funny part. So Rob, the owner of Old Glory, he's talking to him about this fascinating project that they're going to be doing at Dickinson. And so he starts listening to him explain it. He goes, wait a minute, let me drive out to that project. So he comes out there, meets him on site, and Rob gets out of his car and he's looking at this fence with this perplexing look on his face. And Bill's going, this is going to be fun. He goes, I don't know if we want to touch this. Bill goes, what are you talking about, man? This is awesome.
These are the type of things I do. To restore something old and make it look like it did when it was first built 50, 60, 100 years ago.
And not repaired.
Actually rebuilding and make it match. So when you walk away and it's been painted and everything else, it looks like it did back then.
Bill's like, it's going to be fabulous.
Hey, that's right.
It's going to be fabulous.
We make it fabulous.
What about the structural issues with that home?
Actually, the deck, the wraparound deck that was on it was, again, because of the age of it, they had ledger boards underneath the main framing. They didn't have these hurricane hangers and everything, these metal hangers that we have nowadays.
Yeah. And now remember, this was built in 1923, people.
So all of those beams had actually separated from the house. So we had to go in there and pull those back up and everything else, make it look original. So we put ledger boards back underneath there to make it look like it had originally. Then we also used hangers and hid them so you didn't see them.
Yeah, but the structure had actually dropped.
It had actually dropped.
Which is going to affect everything.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
The
yeah.
roof,
that whole thing was going to fall
everything.
apart.
Now, moving on to this 18-year-old house. And again, they work on every kind of house. But I find that these projects really demonstrate the level of technical aptitude and craftsmanship when these guys don't hire a lot of subs unless it's some specialty application like a stamped concrete or something. I mean, they do everything in-house. And I want you to understand and appreciate the level of knowledge, expertise, and the quality of staff that they have on to do your projects. This 1918 house, this is in Galveston, had an original tin roof and hidden gutters. I mean, think about this, 1918. They were still riding donkeys.
Yeah.
So
Henry Ford was just putting out the first Model Ts at that time. So, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I would be sitting there going, I think we'll just rip that stuff off and modernize your house.
And that's what everybody else told them. They wanted to take it off, put up plywood, and then put a standard asphalt roof on it. And I was like, why? We can restore what's there. What do you mean you can
The
restore?
original tin metal roof.
The original tin metal roof.
Wow.
There were a couple of smaller holes in it, and we patched those with tin. You couldn't use aluminum. You can't use steel. You got to use something to match it.
Right.
So that you don't end up with a galvanic corrosion problem.
Right.
And then on top of that, we put the right finish. In this case, we used Cool Seal. And we did a couple of coats of Cool Seal on it. We did a couple of coats of top coat because you can paint anything on top of that. Mm-hmm. And it was a beautiful hunter green when we were done. The hidden gutter, out of 28 supports that were supposed to be underneath that hidden gutter, there was one left.
Wow.
I took it off and I made 28 supports for that. So we could put it up underneath.
You created.
I created.
You didn't go buy, you created.
I handmade them.
Wow. And this is hidden gutters.
Yeah. So all of this is up on the roof, so it's not coming off the edge. It's not dripping down. It's all up there. So we're up on a steep roof, 28, 30 feet in the air.
Oh, it's up there.
Yeah. And refinishing all of this. And everybody else had told them it couldn't be done.
Exactly.
And that one is probably close to 20 years. The last time I talked to the guy, he still hadn't had a leak since I did the work.
Wow, that is amazing.
So,
wow.
yeah.
Bill, you are one fascinating dude to talk to, brother. This is Bill Perini. He's the Director of Operations for Remodeling Division for Old Glory Renovations. An incredible company. And if you go back and you listen to the first episode that we did to talk about how the company's structured in terms of how they actually price their stuff and how they bill you, they're not taking all your money up front. I mean, I'm just telling you right. I don't know how anybody else gets any work with that model and this level of talent and knowledge on staff. Appreciate your time today, brother.
Thank you.
All right, if you want to get a hold of Old Glory Renovations, you can find them online at oldglorytx.com. You can find all these podcasts that we're doing. They're posted on the front page. You can also give them a call if you want them to come out and look at your project at 281-546-8836. That's 281-546-8836. All right, you guys have a great time. We'll see you next week.
That's all for this week's Old Glory Renovations podcast. Tune in next week when Mike and Rob help you enjoy your renovations. Find out more at oldglorytx.com.